Hi, everyone. I'm Alexandra Evreinoff, Managing Director at Involve, and I'm here today with Christina Liciaga, who has been named one of our heroes, ethnically diverse women role models. Hi, Christina. Lovely to meet you.
It's wonderful to meet you as well, Alexandra. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Absolutely, a pleasure. And Christina, would you mind introducing yourself first and foremost?
Yeah, of course. I work at HSBC and I look after customer and products across the Channel Islands, Isle of Man, and Europe. And as you can tell from my voice, I'm originally a New Yorker, but a UK transplant. So I say that I'm Caribbean rooted, New York born, and London is my home. It's kind of my heart, really.
Amazing. Oh, it's really, really nice to be speaking with you today, Christina.
Thank you.
So could you tell us in a nutshell a little bit about your career today?
Yeah, of course. So I started my career as an entrepreneur. I built my first business when I was 19 whilst I was studying at university. And I studied a dual degree in politics and philosophy as well as English Lit, which I started in the US and then went to Oxford actually to finish in the UK, which is my kind of first time in the UK. And then I followed that up with a master's in international law at LSE. And between studies, I tried a whole host of roles, which I think is really important for anybody who's trying to figure out not only what they want to do, but what they don't want to do. So I had a job in pharma as my first corporate, and quickly found out that wasn't for me. I was a trader, then a consultant. I supported startup immigrants who were running their own businesses, just tried a whole host of things. And within that, I realized I loved helping solve big problems, innovating, leading teams. And that's really what led me into consulting and then into finance. And over the last 13 years, I've been with HSBC across Latin America, Asia, Europe, the UK, in a variety of different roles. My focus area and kind of what I guess I'm known for in the industry is really customer, digital, and wealth. And in the time that I've been working within finance, I've really become a bit of an intrapreneur. I can build and scale large businesses, grow them by being really obsessed with the end customer at the end.
Wow, great diversity in your experience as well. So that's really, really interesting. So who would you say is your role model and why? Either professional, like a mentor, or personal?
Well, so the first thing I would say is I have lots of mentors. I've got lots of coaches. There's a whole tribe that I think is like supporting me. And actually part of my tribe are my phenomenal women who all across the world are just incredible and inspirational. But my role models are my grandmothers, both of which who have actually passed away. And because my grandmothers both came to the US from the Caribbean, working and surviving more than anybody should ever have to, they, for me, have really just helped to shape what it means to be brave, what it means to be resilient. I remember, just to give you a quick story, my grandma, Tula, she lived 50 years in a one-bedroom apartment on the Upper West Side. She raised 5 kids, 2 adopted kids. She had multiple grandchildren in her apartment. And regardless of how cramped it was, if there was ever somebody who was in need, her door was always open. And she was the kind of person who would she would get gifts and she would give them away, right? Her life's purpose was really to help others. And I think between my grandmothers, really seeing what hardship, resilience can do and what bravery does in the face of adversity has really helped me to find that same fighting spirit and also that purpose of giving back. So, I mean, regardless of where I am in my career, where I am in the world, my life I know is more than just about me, and it's very much about helping others and helping lift them up as well.
Wow, how powerful. Your grandmothers sounded like really, really amazing, inspirational role models. So when you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, my parents are gonna love this, right? So like a good like a good daughter of Caribbean immigrants, I wanted to be everything that was deemed successful: a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, right? And actually, there's a story I wrote when I was like, I think 5 or 6, which said that I wanted to be all of them. I didn't even want to choose, right? I kind of wanted to be the American dream incarnate. And that aspiration, I think that dream was really a way of making my parents proud. It wasn't even really about me. It was more for the family, right? And actually, as I went through life, I started deciding I didn't want to be those. So, my mom was super surprised when I just won like an award for biology research proposal I had in high school. And I came to my mom and said, I don't want to be a doctor. And she's like, what? You don't want to be a doctor? And I said, no. And then, I majored in a kind of politics philosophy and, then did my master's in law. And she was like, great, she's going to be a lawyer. And then I said, nope, I don't want to be a lawyer either. And, every time that I kind of had these acknowledgements and realizations in my life as to what I wanted to be, I think it was just kind of refining more and more. And actually, as my vantage point grew, I realized that what I wanted to be was maybe bigger than what I had even known was possible initially. And part of that was, I was actually able to go to the UK and then travel to a number of different countries. And that has definitely opened up my perspective and I think made me a much fuller person and expanded the dreams that I had. So yeah, my dreams as a child, I haven't fulfilled any of them. I'm really sorry to my parents for that. But actually my dreams are bigger than my life, I think, is bigger than any of the dreams I even had as a child. And I don't know that I would have been able to dream as big as I've lived.
Oh, that's amazing. That's really, really some powerful words, Christina. And I imagine that your parents must be incredibly proud as well. And so what would you say is the biggest risk you've ever taken?
This one's really hard because I think I take risks all the time. At least I hope I do. But the biggest risk, I think, I was working in pharma, and I knew it wasn't for me. It didn't align really with what it was that I wanted to do. I was pretty miserable in the job on a day-to-day basis, and I left that job without having another job lined up, which again is not the thing you do, and especially not what I was taught to do. I was taught always to not only have one job, but to have multiple jobs and to continue learning and studying, right? So the fact that I left a job without a job, and actually I left just before, like a couple of months just before my bonus as well, but I decided to put my own well-being ahead of whatever financial reward there was going to be, and had to go back. I went back and I lived with my parents for about a year as I was working through trying a whole bunch of different things, my trial period of being that trader, being a consultant, etc. And actually the risk I took was putting my own self-worth ahead of financial reward, which was it was scary. It was a scary thing to do. But I think what it helped me to understand was, firstly, that I'm worth it and also worthy, which I think is really important for anyone. And especially if you're, a minority of any shape and size, you need to constantly have that affirmation that you are worth it and worthy, because there aren't always people who are telling you that, right, in the field that you're in. So that was really important for me, I think, as a foundation. And it also helped me to understand like what my bare minimum is, right? And so I know I can always go back to basics if I need to. And that was a really important pivoting point in my career. It has made me more brave as I take on bigger risks, because I know actually, even if I fail, I'm not going to fall.
Amazing. And so if you had the opportunity actually to go back and tell your 18-year-old self something, what would that be?
It's a great question. I mean, hindsight's 2020, right? So there's a lot of things. I would probably not have one thing. I think I would have journals and journals of things to kind of gift to my 18-year-old self. But if I had to choose two, I think the first one would be dream big, but live bigger. I think the possibilities that you have as an individual are just so much bigger than sometimes your reality. And oftentimes your reality is kind of shaped by your community, and that could be limited, right? So the more you can dream, and you empower your dreams through learning. So learn so you can dream big, but then live your life bigger than even your dreams. And then I think the second thing would be the same thing I tell myself now, which is you're just getting started.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, actually. And so, I mean, I think we've been talking about this in a way, but can you perhaps elaborate a bit more about how your personal journey has informed how you've navigated actually your career?
Yeah, for sure. I actually, the reason I think I'm as passionate as I am about what I do is because when I started my first business, the focus of the business was all around giving access to cash and to cash within communities where banks didn't want to operate, right? So I was finding places to put ATMs in what were like financial deserts because they were, you know, mostly minority neighborhoods. They were kind of underrepresented from a financial perspective. And when I pitched this to get funding as my 19-year-old self to a whole bunch of banks, I was told no again and again and again and again. And actually, to this day, Wachovia, who gave me my first loan as a small business loan, I have a very warm place in my heart for them. They kind of trusted me and entrusted me with building this venture. And knowing how many no's I had to go through before I got a yes, and it was a very small yes, very small loan, but it still helped me to start what became a really successful and profitable business, and helped me to learn that actually there are limitations in finance, right? There are unfortunately barriers to be able to enter, and part of the work that I do, not just in my day job, which is looking after products or propositions or customer service, is actually helping to relieve those barriers, and whether those barriers are for financially vulnerable customers, or those barriers are for women learning about wealth, or if it's around kind of actually making finances kind of more accessible for underrepresented communities. That is what I aim to do, right? So I'm really passionate about the end customer because I feel like I've lived that, and part of what I'm wanting to do is actually to be able to drive that to fruition in what I do on a day-to-day basis. I've also would say that same tenacity that comes with being an entrepreneur has helped me navigate my career, because I've gotten lots of no's along my career cycle as well. You know, you learn when you're in the venture space that a no is just another reason to go and seek for a yes, right? And so repackaging, reframing, reskilling and tooling, I'm not really afraid to kind of go into those unknown spaces, because I know that there's going to be a yes at some point. And even if that yes is just for me to back me, but I think there's a little bit of, I don't know, brazen fearlessness, right? That kind of comes with that, but then also comfort in knowing that when the yeses come, they're really in support of what I believe.
That's amazing, and congratulations, by the way, on creating that venture when you were 19 years old. That's really, really, really impressive. So how would you say, Christina, how have your lived experiences helped you in the industry that you work in today?
Yeah, I mean, I think we just spoke about it, but I think that resilience, kind of coping with failures, also empathy, right? So I grew up in a very big family where everyone kind of leaned in to be able to help raise kind of us, right, as kids. But in that kind of leaning in to be able to help creates an empathy, I think, for for individuals, and definitely did for me, and that's helped in how I lead teams. I also come from a kind of community that's like really diverse, and so I actively am seeking out diversity to kind of bring in, whether it's at my top table or projects or initiatives that I might be driving, and that's definitely, I think, helped in the industry that I'm in, because it helps to bring new voices, new ideas, right? I'm the first one to put my hand up to have interns or grads or whomever might want to kind of be working on something to really kind of step into the space with me. And I think that comes from me having those lived experiences of being young, being an entrepreneur, failing, being from an immigrant family, right? Knowing what it means to kind of space into adversity, and then doing so kind of with empathy and sympathy.
And how has connecting globally with people in other countries or regions influenced your thinking or your approach? And how do you think this approach actually is different in different parts of the world? Do you think there are unique challenges or opportunities?
I think part of the privilege that I've had is that my life has actually been across a number of different markets. And I've actually have a personal life aim to have the number of countries I've visited always equal or exceed my age that I'm above right now, about by 10. But since packing up, I think for the US for university, I've really been committed to finding like what connects humanity. And my experience globally has really shown me that there's more similar about us as people than there is that's different. But I think what makes us different, and this goes to your question of, is it different in different places, are our own stories and lineages. It's our own histories and present truths. And that's really what gives texture to humanity. It's what I think makes us interesting and beautiful and awesome. And it's part of like our own unique experiences and personhood. And I think those are the pieces that need to not only be protected and respected, but also advocated and celebrated. And if I think about how we then lean into that from a diversity perspective, the challenge for inclusion is the same anywhere that you go in the world. But I think that those histories, those lineages, those stories, those truths will be different, right? And being a US person who's lived in the UK and a number of different places, I've been really surprised by the experience of kind of being of Black and mixed Caribbean descent, right? It's in the US, race is a very central conversation. It's something which is discussed often. And in the UK, it's a bit more hidden. It's under privilege and kind of, social constructs. And I think that challenge, which is about how do you unearth some of that history, helps you to actually lean into identifying where the challenges are truly within inclusion. From a work perspective, and I think it's really important. I mean, I've had an awesome privilege of working for an organization that covers 64 countries and 40 million customers that speak like 140 languages, I think. And having worked for them in a number of different places, I've personally seen how the diversity of customers, communities, colleagues globally really make us stronger. And wherever you are in the world, bringing together diverse people, ideas, and perspectives really helps to open opportunities and lead to that more inclusive world. And I think if we take that same perspective globally, locally, then we're going to get a better opportunity to actually drive that inclusion agenda more holistically.
Absolutely. And so, Christina, we often say that you can't be what you can't see. How far does this resonate with you and your experiences in your career?
Yeah, well, so I have two lenses on this, right? So my first lens is a personal one. And I myself didn't have an example, as I've shared, to follow. And growing up, I saw teachers, accountants, nurses, all in New York. So that was the context of what I thought was possible. I didn't know anyone who was a banker or who had left the US to live internationally, or indeed people who were on board, right, at trustees that I didn't even know trustees existed for Fortune 500 companies. So none of that on my radar. I think I didn't really understand that was even possible for myself. So in that context, I think it's really difficult for you to be what you can't see because you don't even know it exists. But I also think it's not impossible, it's improbable, right? Because there's always the first. And you can always be that person who's creating new opportunities, right, for yourself and other people who are like you. And I would say if you do that, my grandmother's example, which is look back and lift up, is really, really important. That journey is not easy. And being the first is never easy, right? The journey is much, much harder, but I don't think it's impossible. And then professionally, which is kind of another lens that I have in my career, I've seen a lot of decisions made across a number of organizations and industries and the context in which they make those decisions. And it's based on the lived and worked experiences of the people around the table. And it's really hard for older, white, male, able-bodied, straight, cis men to be what they can't see or don't know, right? So when making decisions, they're making them with their own lived and worked experiences, and they're making them based on what they have understood and endured in their own lives. That's not necessarily going to be the shared perspectives or experiences of younger, female, differently abled, LGBTQ plus ethnic minorities, right? They equally can't be what they can't see. And so in that context, I think it's really important that we are really building purposeful spaces and places for executives who represent the society we live in and can be the voice in the room and at the table for what has historically been at worst unrecognized and at best underrepresented.
Absolutely, and hence that's why it's so important to celebrate the role models that we have, and make sure that not only are we celebrating role models in our regular lives, but in business, because actually it is so inspiring to hear from all of you and your amazing stories. And we do have a list that is very, very strong and will be a powerful tool for many young talent as well to get inspiration from. So thank you, Christina, for being such an amazing role model and for your time today. It was really great to chat with you.
Oh, it's wonderful speaking to you. And thank you so much for the honor of being part of this list. It really is an utmost privilege. And yeah, I just want to thank you for all the work that you and Involve continue to do, and just helping lift up and create spaces for these role models. It's really inspiring. So thank you.